Material for the brain. Conversations for thinking bodies. Hello and welcome to Material for the Brain podcast. Today is our 10th episode and together with me is Manon Siv Duquesnay. Manon is a French-Danish dancer, choreographer and a teacher based in Spain. She has studied a BA in dance between Uniarts in Sweden and Institut del Teatre in Spain and is currently completing her master at the Danish National School of Performing Arts. I met Manon first time in 2012 and during the last 9 years we have played different roles in each other's lives. She was my first long-term student who became my teaching assistant and later on grew into her own practice, and now we consider each other as colleagues. Manon has always been a big inspiration for me as she has an amazing talent in understanding people and forming relationships. She speaks 7 different languages and as far as I'm concerned is an embodied example of multiculturalism. I was super excited to reconnect to Manon and to hear about her new adventures settling down in Spain and building a cultural center in the mountains of Asturias. Hello, Manon. How are you?
Hey, Manon. I'm good. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, I'm super excited to have you here, old friend. It's been really quite some time since we had a space to exchange.
Definitely. Quite some time, yeah.
Yeah, how are you? Where are you? What is up with you?
I'm good. I'm in Spain, in Asturias, which is in the north of Spain. Mountains and not as sunny as most people think when they think about Spain. But it's a very green and beautiful area that I moved to in summer. A bit because of everything that is happening. And then besides that, I'm also doing a master's in choreography in Copenhagen.
Oh, wow. Like an online program.
It's presential, but since before Christmas, all institutions closed down in Denmark. So I've been here and have had more individual tasks. And now hopefully I can go there in March. But yeah, the traveling is a bit more complicated than I expected when starting it.
Yeah, sure. And how is this? What is the name of the village that you or town that you said?
The village is called Villanueva de Santo Adriano.
No chance I will be able to repeat that.
It's like Santo Adriano is the council, and Villanueva is the main village where there's 50 inhabitants, and the whole council is 288 people living in 9 different villages. So we're really
wow, it's really intimate.
Yeah, I know all neighbors already.
And what is the altitude? Is it like you said, it's mountains, but it's very high, or is it?
We're in a valley, so we are actually just, I think, 300 meters above the ocean. But just then the village just on top of us is 800 and 1,000, and you can see mountains going quite further up. But we are more in a valley where we have a quite nice climate.
I must say, this is something I really miss in my life, to be more outside and to, not to be, I love the offer of Vienna and living in the city, but every time I speak to somebody who, especially from our, professional field, every time I meet a dancer or a movement practitioner who moves to the countryside, I must admit I have some enviness of the courage to disconnect from the big cultural centers. How does it feel for you?
I mean, I was just thinking this morning because we have chicken and sheep. And this morning I went to open and to give them food. And our sheep live there's a river that goes through the village. And to go to the sheep, I go along this river. And right now it's really full on with water. And I was just thinking wow, it's so crazy that this impact that nature has on my body in the morning when I wake up, in comparison to if I would go out on a city street and all the cars and bikes and noise, that it's just like breathing the fresh air and listening to the sound of the river. I think it really does something special to the body. And I feel much more calm here, even though I'm doing a lot of things. It's just something else to also see horizons like far away and follow the cycle of nature somehow much more intensely and closely.
Wow, that sounds... Yeah, it brings up a lot of memories, because when I was younger, I used to live, when I was still living in Israel, I lived in a very small village, also with like kind of 60 families, and I had a little cabin in the hills. And yeah, part of my routine was to wake up and make tea, and I would sit outside and just breathe and watch how the calm rhythm of everything. Although, like sometimes, of course, nature is not always calm. And I guess one of the reasons that we live in cities and with all this like technological infrastructure is due to the fact we want to avoid the catastrophes of nature. But like in the right balance, yeah, it's something that I feel for me too. It really gives a lot to the body. So do you spend a lot of time outdoor? You're also moving outdoor? Like what is your routine there? Like what are you actually doing nowadays?
Yeah. I do spend a lot of time outdoor. One of my routine is getting water from the, how do you call that in English? Like a fountain?
Okay, yeah.
Yeah. So during the day, we live like up here, and then I go down to get the water from the fountain and go up. And that feels like a very short but quite intense body practice. I really feel when I have been in Copenhagen for some time and everything is flat, and I come here and the first days I get really sore in my legs because everything is just immediately up and downhill. And then, yeah, taking care of the animals is more my partner who's doing it, but I'm also helping, or like now, because it's also the beginning of us moving here, we've been putting fences, which is like really physical work. We made a chicken house, and then we have a piece of land that we're preparing to grow vegetables. So like that's part of my daily practices. And then we're opening this studio here. So also every day I try to come here and spend some hours in the studio. And I haven't really been doing like more dance or movement practices outdoor, because as I said, it's quite a small village and it feels a bit intimidating right now. Like it's like the kind of village where all the old people are in their houses and looking out the window the whole day and checking out people.
Okay, so first you need to make a good social impression before you expose the weirdo inside of you, huh?
Exactly. Like little by little, I'm gonna start doing some movement practices. I've been doing a bit sometimes when we're working the earth and I need a break, then I start doing some Tai Chi movements and stuff that probably people have been seeing, but I think it's okay.
Cool. And what is the MA that you're doing? Like, are you already in like in which phase are you in the program? Is how many years?
It's a newly started MA in choreography in the National School of the Arts. I think it's the English name, in Denmark, in Copenhagen. And I started in August. It's the first year that they do it. And it's me and two other peers. So we're quite like a small and privileged group, I would say. I did an audition just a year ago and got the news that I got in just before the pandemic started. And then we started in August and had quite a normal school year until December, and then things closed down. But anyways, this semester is focused more on individual work. So I am so lucky that I have a studio here and I can work on my own. And then we have more like feedback sessions and individual readings, also looking at references and sharings. But it's a master in choreography, and it's focused on physical practice and choreographic production. And somehow considering, researching, trying out what does these two terms mean for us individually and more generally for the dance field.
Sound interesting. I'm looking forward to see what you're gonna come up with in your project.
I made a first production already in the autumn where I got so inspired by my new life here that I was taking building with wood and sawing and hammering as a concept or like as a practice and trying to stage it and see what does it mean in relation to the body and our knowledge as dancers and movers. It was quite fun.
Yeah, it's interesting where, like my father is a farmer, so I grew up, I didn't like when my parents met, we left pretty quickly his farm, his land, but still I grew up next to a father who is very much into physical work, and there is a certain interesting thing that a lot of people who are working physically with tools, they are quite disconnected from the body, even though they are using it so much, and there is a certain, and so when you bring body awareness into physical work, it becomes something very interesting. And I find it extremely challenging. Like I was doing, when we moved to our new flat, I did a lot of carpentry work and I fucked up my spine completely. It's so challenging to work consciously.
Yeah. I mean, I think from the experience I did in the autumn and also just constantly having it present when I'm working outside, is that when we are building or working the earth, there's something external to us. That's the meta, the point of work somehow. So you easily get focused outside your body, I think, in relation to, okay, I need to do this movement to the ground, or I need to get this piece of wood into another one. So it feels like you really need to work a lot in your consciousness to be able simultaneously to be present and aware of how you're using your body. And yeah, and it's like a hard, like it's intense work and it's very repetitive, and you just need to do it. It's not like you can, sometimes if you're in the middle of a flock of cows and you need to move them, it's not like you can just stop up and breathe and
yeah, there is necessity. But it sounds as if what you're suggesting, which is interesting because it reminds me the conversation I had in the last episode, that like instead of putting your attention on let's say your task, you just put attention on the body and you see how the task take care of itself, kind of, no?
Yeah. But I have a lot of fun with it when we have been working the earth, of really being like, how can I do this movement so it becomes more fluent, so I really use my entire body. And it really works that little by little you get into a rhythm that feels more sustainable. But then there's also a moment where you get more tired, where I feel that the body maybe has more of a tendency to go into a bad pattern. So then you need to like once again settle down and be like, how can I do this in a more healthy way?
Yeah, I guess maybe the only, like, what it pulls my mind to think of it is like, in an ideal environment I have the time to do these adjustments. But I guess like one aspect of life is sometimes this kind of emergency, like, okay, as you said, like the cows are here, I have to do it. And then like I guess it's part of the thing to accept, if you choose to work with the body, that it's not going to be ideal all the time, and that you will have to compromise certain things. And
yeah.
No, what do you think?
I mean, definitely. I think I feel it both in my work as a dancer and as a choreographer, but also just here in the countryside, that both ways of living are very ideal and idyllic. But when you get to the real work, there's like so many things to it that makes things much more complex, and many different details that maybe don't make you have so much time for just the practice itself. That make you have to really improvise and be flexible and throw yourself into things and just catch it in the moment and get the best of it, and hopefully learning and figuring out next time to move the shape with a bit more elegance.
As far as I remember our exchanges in the studio, you're pretty talented in throwing yourself into the unknown. So it's like I trust that you are doing well.
Definitely. I think it's as much a life practice as a movement practice. Yeah.
Manon, maybe you can take me and also our audience a little bit into the past and share a little bit like some key moments that brought you to the place that you're working as a dancer and a choreographer, because I know I remember a little bit your story, but I know that it's not something that you started. It's not something you grew up into. So how did you arrive to that point now?
Yeah. I mean, I grew up in the countryside on a little island in Denmark. And there, like lately, I definitely realized that this has a lot to do with my love and passion for movement, because I lived in a very open space and was playing a lot outdoors as a kid and climbing trees and just using my body physically. And then I think I had some years as a teenager that I was very disconnected from my body. But then I started doing theater and was very lucky that there was a quite innovative drama school on the island where I lived, and we were doing theater. We were a group of kids from 9 to 18 years old and doing quite some like experimental and device theater. So when I finished high school and I moved to Copenhagen, I thought that I wanted to be an actress. But simultaneously, I started taking dance classes and realized that what I actually really had enjoyed and learned from in the theater was more like the being within a group, moving dynamics, group dynamics, being on stage also, and getting to know each other and oneself through that. So in Copenhagen, I started taking more dance classes, and I did 1 year in a place called the Academy, where I did more dance theater. And then from there, I went into like 1 year preparatory contemporary dance education, which was just like full on. I think I started when I was 21 and had my first ballet classes, putting the wrong hand on the bar and that kind of things, faking it till you make it. And then I did lots of auditions for different European dance schools and got into DOC in Stockholm, where I did a 3-year education, like a BA in dance performance. And within those 3 years, I went for a semester to Barcelona, which I think impacted me a lot in relation to the people I met there that were really like living movement as a passion and as a need and as a desire to meet and share. Like we would go quite much to the streets and just train and teach each other, which has become very much part of how I've been moving around in the world. And after graduating, I worked a bit in Copenhagen for a choreographer there. And then I went to South America also, where I took part in different dance festivals, was dancing a lot of contact improvisation during my time there, and also did more like own works that I started collaborating with a friend that I met there, and we set up 2 performances and organize also some events. Like organizing events has also always been part of my practice, of creating those spaces to share movement and more choreography and performance. And then the last 4 years, I've been more in Europe, still sometimes to Latin America, teaching, assisting you. I've been collaborating with Dasha Lavrenikov, that we've both been like developing a teaching practice, but also bringing it into choreographic methods and performances. Then I've been doing more of my own work, and have some solos. And then also I started a platform in Copenhagen, which is more like we to do events, artistic events, where we invite only female performers and artists, and where I have been producing also some performances, and continuously just spending time in studio outdoors whenever I had time to just focus on the research and the movement practice, and teaching also all the time alongside. I think that's more or less a trajectory.
Yeah. It's different, I think, too, because I know part of this story, but it's always interesting to see, how you perceive yourself and like how things came to realization. And yeah, one thing that I was very attracted about hosting you is because you're maybe the first person that I maybe considered a little bit as my student, because there was some period of time. I mean, I think we met while you were studying in DOC, no?
Yeah.
Just before you went to Spain. And I was slowly transitioning out of the like the dance education system, and we kept in touch. And then you studied with me for a little while, and then with time, your role grew, and like instead of studying with me, you started assisting me, and then we also talked a lot about teaching practice, and then you just started to do your own things. And so first, I was very excited to invite you, just because I feel it's something very beautiful to see somebody that you accompany, and now you see like, wow, they have their complete independent universe that I can now go and learn from you, and that's something that I find is a very inspiring thing. So what helped you to grow inside, and and come from a position of just consuming and studying, and into growing into becoming an independent teacher or creator? And what helped you in this internal process?
That's a good question. I mean, I think I realized like more when we met, I was in this school situation where it was just like that you had this buffet and you could just take from everything. And when I finished, I realized, now you need to go and go to the restaurant. And before you can go to the restaurant, you need to have some money and decide on what dish you want. But then I realized like I was presented with so many different teachers and ways of studying and what was important for me. And there I think that my meeting with you was one of the people that I really felt a connection with and that I wanted to learn more from. So I think that's how I started studying more with you, like going and being like, I want to dig into this, I want to dig into that. And then I also had a teacher once who said that you only master something when you start teaching yourself. And I think that really got it stuck to me. And I was like, just by sometimes having possibilities of being invited to teach, and through that, teaching, then realizing like, wow, it's really interesting when you've been learning something from someone and suddenly you need to put it into your own words or into your own body. And in that process, I think that we were conversating about, you were teaching me as a student and that I said at some point that I was interested in collaborating more and that you were open for that and invited me to assist you. That I think that was also like a very, generous, doing of you to give me that possibility of somehow changing and then observing that different role somehow and giving me the space also to more and more come with my own understandings of your practice and experiences and translating it also just that we're a man and a woman, but also that you are much taller than I am, like that we obviously our bodies have different ways of understanding and functioning just because of our anatomical setup. And I think that that you were very open to see that, and to have my knowledge become part of your teaching and sharing with other students. Yeah, did that answer more or less?
Yeah, I don't know. It's like, I think it's not a question that has an answer. So I was just curious to hear what you think, because like one thing that I can see about this process is that, and I think that we've personally managed to do it very nicely and quite harmoniously, is to maintain the tension between asking for space and giving space. Because you initiated something, maybe if you wouldn't have initiated it, maybe it would have never happened.
Yeah.
Or maybe I would have come to the conclusion or to the idea that I want to invite you to collaborate. But I think that there is something important in that. And then, of course, then it was up to me to see, am I in a place that I'm willing to share? And I think that, I don't know, I'm always more attracted to the idea of, like, okay, if you want something, take the courage to ask for it and then see what happens, than to wait for people to be considerable to accommodate my needs. But that's my starting point. I don't know. How do you feel about that?
I mean, I think there's definitely something about following your intuition. I think I really followed my intuition and just threw myself into be like, hey, I want to collaborate with you. Do you want to? And it's definitely a risk taking, but the only risk you take is that there's a no in the end instead of a yes. And I think for me that has been all the time in my process very important to be brave enough to ask those questions that might be a yes or might be a no. But if you don't ask them, then you just stay in wherever you are, or maybe get more driven around rather than driving where you want to go somehow.
I guess it's just like we are living in a period where there is so much abundance from everything, that I think sometimes this abundance, and I can see it a little bit with my kids, creates this illusion like that we are entitled to have things. And what I really admired about how you handled our relationship is that it was like that you embodied the idea that if you want something, you have to also work for it and invest, and then you can get everything you want. And to be honest, I'm also very grateful that you came all the time and was present, first as a student, then in the assisting role, and then literally I remember that maybe it was the last internship we did together. You were just teaching your own stuff, and I was like, "Wow, this is very cool. I don't know how to do these things." and then it's like, then the circle is kind of complete, because then like you are really ready to departure, and then we can slowly transform our relationship to just being colleagues.
Yeah, I mean, I think there has also been part of this in like that you have been sharing with me your practice, but you also never were like, I'm the master and I'm your only master. So I think that there's also this thing of being open to share your practice with me, and at the same time that I would get other knowledge from other people. That is definitely also very important, because I think in our field sometimes there's, or in any kind of field, sometimes there's also this tendency to just follow one master, and that the master doesn't allow the student to find its own way eventually. So I think there's definitely a reciprocity in what I was looking for, and your openness towards that, an invitation. And then I was also thinking, I forgot. I was just thinking about something else.
Maybe it will come up.
Yeah, maybe it will come.
Yeah, I mean, one thing that I never understood, and is these kind of teachers who have this obsession to put borders around their students in the sense of, controlling what kind of information would come into their student minds. I just don't understand it. I don't know. Like, I'm sure you've encountered people like that around the dance and movement field, no?
Definitely. Like, that was what I was saying before, that there's definitely some people that have this idea that I have the only right answer to what is important, being movement-wise or life-wise. And I think that that's something that I really felt with you when we started. I mean, always, both as a student and as a more assistant and colleague, that we can talk about things and discuss things and understand that, of course, we have different ways of understanding and doing, and there's no right or wrong. It's just different, and we can learn from those differences rather than being like, no, this is like that and not that. I mean, sometimes it's good to be specific about things, but yeah, it depends. And also, what I thought about before is that I also think something that I learned from you and in this time that we were practicing more together is also how life is an important part of the practice, and how everything that is happening in your life like influences and teaches you about the more specific movement practice, that I felt like that has been accompanying me all the time and have made me grow also to take my life, and not only when I'm practicing to like observe what is it that I'm doing, what do I want to do.
I want to open a new chapter, or like to take a conversation a little bit to focus more on you, because one thing that I always really admired about you, which was also like really practical tool, but also just the quality of being, is the fact that you, how would I phrase it? I think you're a great embodiment of the idea of multiculturalism. And when I say great embodiment, is because you speak so many languages. And so on the practical level, it was always great that if we are in a space, and then, like I remember we were teaching together in Spain, and then like if I couldn't articulate well enough in English for the people, you could immediately jump and translate it into Danish, Spanish, Portuguese. Which other languages you speak?
French, German, and Swedish.
So it's like, wait, let's count. So French, English, Danish, Swedish, Spanish, Portuguese,
and German. 7.
Wow, oh my God. It's like...
Now I'm learning Asturian.
Oh my God.
Which is the local language.
This is amazing. I really find it amazing. I wonder if it's like, is it because I heard this theory that after you master the third language, the fourth, fifth, it becomes easier. Is it true, or is it just...
I mean, I definitely think so in a way. I think that I was very lucky to be born with 2 different languages. Like my French is my mother tongue from my mother's side, and then Danish from my father's side, and growing up in Denmark. And at the same time, like Danish is a Germanic language, so it helped me learning English, German, and Swedish. And with French, I could easily learn Spanish and Portuguese. But there's definitely something about, I think they say that children up till the age of 5, if they have 7 different people speaking 7 different languages, they can learn 7 languages until they're 5. And it's definitely like when learning languages, when it's part of the way that you develop, it's much easier, because it's not only about the verbal language, but also about how the verbal language reflects culture and different personalities, I think, ways of being and understanding the world.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what I find so inspiring about you, because I think that in many dance spaces, there is this, let's say, superficial idea of multiculturalism just because there is people from different backgrounds. But the actual exchange that is happening, and maybe I don't want to be that judgmental, but I will speak on my behalf. So when I studied in SID, in this academy in Salzburg, and we were people from all over the world, it took me years to understand what is my cultural filter, what is the cultural lens that through it I see the world. And even now that like I'm almost 11 years in Austria, like still the majority of the time, this lens is almost like transparent and I cannot see it. And then there's moments of awareness. Oh, wow, yeah, that's actually, I'm just behaving like this because I grew up in Israel. And then, you know, like, so there is on the surface, this feeling of, people from all over the world, but in the actual exchange that is happening, I feel like we meet a lot through these different filters that we are not even aware of. And I think that the first step in understanding a culture is to start speaking the language, because you learn so much about how people think. So like how do you relate to this? Because I don't know also, like, if you speak, to which level you speak every language. I'm sure you have certain languages that are more dominant than others. So there is probably some hierarchy there, but like how does it help you to understand people?
I mean, it definitely helped so much. And I think also like I myself grew up with two cultures, and a lot of children are growing up in those circumstances now. And there's something complex about it, because you feel like sometimes you feel like you understand or you belong to both cultures, and sometimes you feel like you aren't any of them. But just the way of already growing up and understanding that there's different ways of doing things, I think helps you in the meeting with other people, that you can quicker connect to that. Maybe I'm saying something and they're not understanding it, and it's not because I'm saying it wrong or because they don't want to do it like that, but it's just because we have different ways of perceiving the world. And then we can try to formulate it better through words, but we still might see it differently. And definitely, like I've always been fascinated about languages. Just when I was living in Sweden, an example is like there's the exact same word, which is grine, and in Danish, and it means laughing, and in Swedish it means crying. And I was like, that's amazing that two neighbor countries have a very similar language, but then somehow the same word has developed in opposite direction. No? Like what happened? How? And I think it's just a good example of how easily we can misunderstand each other through language. And also what you said, about like dominating different languages. Like Spanish has been a language that has always, I think different languages attract us in different levels. Or like we connect to different languages in different ways. French for me, it's very much like family and love. Danish, it's very much my childhood and friends. English is very much like a working language for me, but also philosophically. And Spanish for me, it's like a very fun and passionate and also like my contemporary, or it's the language that I speak with my husband or that I work a lot in. And still I'm in a moment now in Spanish that I speak it so well, but then still sometimes I meet with like, wow, this is not my culture. And I really start understanding people, but still sometimes I'm blown away about the, very basic different ways of me trying to formulating in Spanish, and it not being understood, not because that I'm saying it wrong, but because it's just like a very different idea culturally.
So from all your traveling and, you know, and meeting different peoples, do you believe in the idea of universalism, that there are some universal things connecting humanity, or are you more, from your experience, perceive the world as like, no, it's like different cultures will, you know, like they produce different type of people, and like there are no basics that we can connect everyone together? I know it's a big question. You don't have to, and you know, if you want to answer it, we have to talk for hours. But I'm just curious about your position.
Yeah.
I know mine, so I'm just curious.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think yes and no. I think that there's some very basic human needs that we all connect to, which is like love, which is closeness, which is family, which is water, which is food. But then it manifests itself very differently. And especially with Dasha Lavrenikov, that I've been collaborating with a lot, is also because we have like we met through this multiculturalism somehow. Like she also has double nationalities and has been living in different ways. And we started making a whole network of people that we connect with each other, even though we come from different nationalities, but because we have had different experiences that we have experienced similarly. But I think that there's definitely ways that, I mean, it's a big question for me because, for example, in Argentina, I felt so much at home, but I don't have any ancestors that are from Argentina, but something there just intuitively makes me feel home, the same in here. And then at the same time, there's also the more practical things that make you understand or feel. And I think there's both, like there's a way that we are connected maybe universally as humans, but then I also really, really appreciate the details of each different country or valley. Like here, it's amazing to really study and focus in. There's people here that have lived like generations and generations in the same house. And for me, it's fascinating to observe this kind of really belonging to one place, and both the traditions, the words that comes with it. So I think for me, it has been a gift to travel around and meet so different people and cultures and interests. But there's also a huge richness in staying in the same place and digging into the story of that place, or the traditions.
I mean, this is another topic that I want to dive with you, but we'll give it a bit more time because I still have some. So like first, it's interesting because when I hear your answer, so I already could kind of connect it to your background of being able to say like, hey, I see this, but I also see that. So it's like, and I would be much more like, no, I know, like there are universal principles that connects that, and that's it, and it's nice that you have this ability to hold two opposing positions at the same time and argue for them. And I think that's, maybe it relates a little bit to what you've mentioned as a kid, that, like how we grow up. I also see it with my children, because I grow them. They have Hebrew as a mother tongue, but they already speak very good German, and my daughter starts to understand English. And they think, I guess that, they have a really different experience than what I had. Because when I grew up in Israel, and that's one of the things that I regret the most, that I'm not regret because I didn't took this choice, but my mother, she was born in Morocco and her mother tongue is French, and it's a language that I really love. But it was not really recommended during these days to speak with children more than one language. So, and also she was already like she felt more comfortable with Hebrew. So then she chose not to speak French to us, the kids. And till today, I have this like, I could have learned this. I could have known this language. And now I need to put the effort to do it. And that's a different ballgame to commit to learn a language.
Yeah.
But I want to bring us back to the idea of language because, like one thing that I can see and start throwing into the idea of universalism is the idea of movement as a language. And I know that in the dance world and also in other environments, people throw this term of like a movement language. So first, do you consider movement as a language?
It makes me think of my cousin. One day she asked me how many languages I speak, and I said 7, and she was like, no, you speak 8 because you dance. And she was like 5, and I thought that it was so sweet, her way of observing me, and throwing that like, of course you speak 8 languages because you dance. And she said, and that's your favorite language, right? And I was like, wow, yeah. But so yes, like for me, language, I think beyond being language is about communication. So I don't speak French to speak French. I speak French to be able to talk to my grandmother and talk to the people from my mother's country. I speak English to be able to teach. I speak Spanish to talk with my partner. Like just speaking a language for the language itself, I think for me, it's not important. It's really about the communication. And in that sense, I think that movement is definitely a way of communicating. But as verbal languages, movement also has a lot of ways to misunderstand And then again, if we start talking about different, I mean, if we go to movement more as a practice, like if you go and see a dance piece that's just based on movement, people can understand it in so many ways, which of course reflects how they have been educated, where they have been growing up, where they like, what interests them, no? So I think still, yeah, if you talk about movement as a language, it has many different ways of being understood, or even each country, each verbal language has its different movement vocabulary.
Maybe that's the cultural level, like the different verbal language interpret the movement with different words.
Yeah.
But I guess there's also like, things that are very obvious, no? Like if we're in one room, I just take a silly extreme example, and I move my hand very fast toward your face, and I hit you in the face. That's very obvious, like, way of communicating. And I think that there will not be a lot of like, only in very unique situation we would interpret it differently, no?
Yeah, definitely. Like there's all the more universal movements, let's say, and then there's the more abstract ones, or more more specific and singular movements.
So what does it mean for you to communicate? Because I really connect or identify with this kind of utilitarian approach. Like, I do that because it serves me in something. I'm not just it's my curiosity is to be part of life. That will be my word. So like, what does it actually mean to communicate in language? Like, I don't know, because I have my own definition, but I'm sure that yours is different, and it's also something that is very interesting to discuss, I think.
I think, like, to communicate in language, for me, it's a lot about listening and understanding and getting closer to other human beings. It sounds like very, I don't know, hippie-ish. but basically, I think that's that, like, to both to express yourself and your needs or your thoughts or your dreams or whatever, and at the same time connect with other people and listen to them and then start those dialogues. And because I think that when, like, that's also connected to culture, when we meet other people, or me when I have been traveling a lot abroad, then I also, in that way, I suddenly realize my Danish patterns. While if I would have stayed in Denmark, maybe I wouldn't have seen it in the same way, because I just, like, everything would be the same. But when you leave and you meet other cultures, it's also a, like, stronger way to suddenly realize things about where you come from and see those differences clear.
So what was the practical application of movement communication for you? Like, was jamming, or like what did you consider, like, if for you to actually, where does it start, or where does it end, or maybe there is no end?
I mean, the practical thing, I would say that it's an expressing and an understanding. I don't know if that's so practical. It's still very vague. Or sensing.
Sensing.
Yeah. Like, when I connect more to the movement language, it's because it opens up to communicating through different senses and not only through the sound
Yeah, that's something I can also resonate with. Yeah, because it's like, I feel that there's a different type of tuning that you need to do, because it's so personal also. So it's like, I can speak to a stranger very quickly, like, get some information about something, but I wouldn't do the same thing with some, practical things about the body. I wouldn't just start asking somebody, help me to stretch here quickly, which is also a form of physical communication. But so what do you think that, how did engaging in so many hours of practicing movement, how did it movement communication, how did it contributed your life? Or like why would you recommend somebody who, let's say if somebody is listening to the podcast and they're just doing, I don't know, yoga, whatever, they're just engaging in solo practice, why would you recommend them to jump into the boat of communication?
I mean, I think that our body really reflects our mind and the other way around. So I think it's also like the moving your body and listening to your body, understanding your body is a way of understanding yourself and whatever you have to deal with in this world or in your life. And it's not one way or the other. Like, it's not like I start moving and I only move and I stop talking or thinking, but that it's completely connected. And like what I also enjoy a lot in movement practice, it's that you move, but then you also put words on the way that you move and what that makes you understand. And then you go back to moving on top of what you have just been saying. So I think movement really feeds communication.
Yeah, it's something from all the things that I miss in the Corona pandemic. That's definitely the one thing that becomes harder and harder. That there's just very rare amount of opportunities to just be in a room and play and exchange and communicate with movement. Yeah, I mean, we slowly start to have more possibilities here, but very slowly. Yeah. Can you still? I mean, you have your own studio, so you don't have this problem, no?
Huh?
I said you have your own studio, so you don't have this problem, but maybe you have the problem of finding dance partners in the small village.
Yeah. I mean, it's funny because in the first part of the pandemic, I was locked inside in Madrid in my partner's parents' apartment. And there it was really like this kind of sensation of knocking yourself into the wall and not being able to stretch your arms to both sides without bumping into a dog or a sofa. And I was really imagining this big, white, empty space. And now when I go to the studio in the morning, I'm like, wow, it happened and manifested in so few months. Now it's here.
Wow.
So I definitely have this luxury that I think I've been dreaming of for many years as a practitioner to have a space that I can go to almost any time. Then it also brings lots of other extra work to it that doesn't always give you the time to go to the studio. Or you go to the studio and you end up sitting in front of the computer and doing emails. But so yeah, definitely having that space, it's a big first step. And then I realized for me how important it is to have friends and colleagues in this, because I love going to the studio by myself, but eventually I think it's really important to have another body or another person to share your experience with. So here we do one weekend intensive a month where we're so lucky that people come from different places with quite some experience. And we just had one weekend last weekend. And that fills me so much of being able, both we invite a teacher to come and teach and then just sharing the studio with 10 other bodies. It's amazing.
Your partner is also dancing, no?
My partner is dancing, also, but more, I would say, part-time.
Okay.
It's always been part of his life, but not as fully present as it is for me. Like for me, it's really what I dedicate my life to, I would say, or like part of my identity. And now, since we moved here, my partner realized that he's more interested in animals and spending time with sheep and chicken and that. So we're also we co-share the work with the studio, but he's more also, responsible in spending time outdoors. And then he's teaching weekly classes here more for the local audience, which is also something he enjoys. But eventually we also hope to find time to to practice together and to continue. Like right now, I think it's more about time, that it's many things that we need to settle in this new lifestyle.
Yeah, but I guess it's a very unique relationship, no, to have a life partner, which also you share this kind of let's say very intimate, unique passion of yours, which is to communicate with movement. No, like, do you enjoy dancing together?
Yeah, I mean, that's how we met. and yeah, it's definitely something that I like. I really enjoy or love that common understanding of the body and the playfulness and that there can be in that, and that way of communicating with each other also. Yeah, it's definitely something I enjoy sharing also with my partner. I think it's important for me because I understand so much of the world through my body that it would be hard to date a computer nerd that like this. I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm also a computer nerd, but I don't see it like that. Yeah. Actually, like you started to talk more. We talked already. We mentioned the studio. Maybe you can talk more about it, because I'm very curious to hear about this project. So I know it's also now in a very crucial phase with a crowdfunding. So maybe you can share a little bit, like, what is this project? What is this studio space? Like, what are you doing there?
Yeah. I mean, so from the beginning, I think in my life, I think many dancers and movers can relate to that this need to have a space is something really important in our field. So I always had a dream that eventually I would find some people to open a studio with. And also in the countryside, through my experiences of both teaching, going to festivals, or having artistic residencies, there's something very specific about going to nature, being in one place and moving, creating there, that gives another focus. And then, yeah, as a bit of a result of 3.5 months of lockdown and thinking about life, we got the opportunity with my partner to come here to Asturias, where I have an aunt that lives. And we were actually just here for 2 months to help them out. But then we really liked the place, and we came to this building where I am, and was shown that there was one big empty space that was like almost 100 square meters, high ceiling, no pillars in the middle. And we just looked at each other and we were like, this is perfect to make a studio. It's just like, it's too good to be true. And at the same time, we were also told that there was a funding that we could apply for, some European funding to start up a new project. So like within a few weeks, we just got everything, like wrote down the project of opening a studio for like both, because here in the area, there's no yoga classes, or like there's nothing really for movement. You have to go to the biggest town nearby, which is half an hour. So it's also not so much. But so we thought, yeah, to open a studio, to give classes for the local people, to then host more like monthly weekend intensives, summer workshops, also like longer immersions, and then also artistic residencies, which is for my more choreographic practice, something that I understand is very needed. And yeah, then we applied for the funding, and to get the funding, we had to have everything done by October. So we started just like with some savings that I had to set a floor. We got the whole space painted, electricity, and then the funding didn't go through. Like, we don't really know what happened, but it, because of COVID, it didn't come anyways. So then we were in the middle of like, we have a studio half open. We got the license, couldn't open because Spain got back to lockdown, or Asturias did. And then now in January, we finally started with some weekly classes and some events like with smaller groups and not all the events and workshops and stuff that we want to, but we're starting little by little. And then we started a crowdfunding, both because we didn't get the money from the funding that we were hoping, and because when you start such a project, you realize that there's much more expenses that you didn't count with in the beginning. And also because we thought we could open in September and only started now with a limited amount of students. So now we still we need to put a ventilation, we need to set up the web page, we still need to pay some of the things that we did. And that's why we decided to do a crowdfunding, both as a way to communicate the project and have people see it and try to reach further than from our own little bubble of people. And then also just hoping that with the many small supports from many people, we can get the financial help that we need to finish the details and bigger and smaller details with the space to really get it up running and not start with a loan or something. Yeah.
And from this triangle of local community, a center for events and an art space, what is your biggest attraction, or what do you want to, what is the identity that you would want to push most for this place, or you don't have any? What is your interest there?
I mean, for me personally, I think that the artistic residency is something that really inspires me, because it's a way of mixing both what I know from the more international community and bring it to this valley. That for me, it's a beautiful place and there's really amazing people that live here. And I'm super excited about the meeting between artists from all over the place and this local space. And from my partner, I think what is more inspiring is they changed with the local people. So that's also a bit the way that we're dividing it now, that he's more focused on the weekly classes and teaching children and grown-ups and sharing movement principles with people that don't have experience but that have curiosity, and then that I'm more interested in, or also I'm also interested in that, but definitely this decision of moving to the countryside and being all alone in the sense of dance community, there's definitely an interest in bringing dancers and movers here to share the practice.
And how does I mean, it sounds really fresh, so maybe it's too early to ask the question, but maybe you can already perceive, what is the effect of such a place in the countryside, because if you open a studio in the city, it's just another studio, but there it's what do you feel are people attracted to it? Are people cautious about it? What do you want it to represent there for people?
Yeah. I mean, we had already 2 weekend intensives with teachers coming from Madrid, and also dancers coming from more cities. And their experience is just that it's amazing to wake up in the morning, everything is silent, you see the sun come up behind the mountain, you walk to the studio on a green path. It's it's super idyllic. And I think it brings an openness and a freshness to it. It's really open. And that on one side, that more for the movement weekends, and also just for the artistic creation and research. Often when we are in the cities, there's so many impressions all the time, so you get more easily influenced. And I think that being here gives more space for your own reflection and creation, that you can really somehow disconnect from all the outside and connect more with yourself, or with your group, or with your practice or research.
Uh, yeah, okay, but I was also curious, like specifically, like what is happening to the local community? Like, do you like? Although it was also interesting to hear that aspect of the space, but I mean, like, do you? What does it does to a village to suddenly, because I'm asking it, I've seen once a documentary about Osho. I think it was called Wild Country, about how they came into some nowhere in the US. They opened their center, and like 10 years after, there was people with rifles defending this place against the locals. And of course, this is a really crazy example, but how like, there is still a certain tension between this kind of like inviting something new to the countryside and this kind of invasive energy of like changing radically a space that is traditional. So how do you negotiate this tension, and what do you feel from the local community?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's definitely something about creating a meeting point. And for example, it's a quite progressive valley that we are in somehow. There's definitely the really traditional part, but there's also the last 5 years, there has been regular yoga classes here, but from a teacher coming from the big town and Taring. So yoga, for example, is a practice that has already been known here. And we see that in the classes that we propose. One class is more, yoga inspired, and that class is full already. And then we propose another class for movement and improvisation. And you can see in people that there's a curiosity, but it also sounds like scary, like, oh, I have to improvise. But then we have a few people that are coming to that class, and we hope that little by little, like that the mouth-to-mouth communication will also make people see that it's not so scary or so different. But I think that's definitely the key, to come here and to show and to share that we have new ideas, different ways of doing. But at the same time, we are also very interested in how the farmers take care of their animal, or how they know when to plant what vegetable, or how they make the cedar. Like, I think with my partner, we're really interested in both, like to learn, because we understand that there's so much knowledge in this area, but that we at the same time also come with our knowledge and somehow creating a meeting point between both.
It sounds really fascinating, because, there is a certain challenge with the proposition of coming from outside with your progressive idea of what is a good way of living, especially when you go and interact with communities that are more traditional. Like, you can also, to some extent, you can connect it all the way into colonialism, and that nobody thinks nowadays that is something positive to keep on doing. But not that I'm suggesting that you're doing anything like that, just to be clear, but that's already like, I think, like maybe a big challenge in initiating such a project is how to communicate it. And like, it brings us back to the communication topic. Like, how do you enable to create a bridge with people who have different values, and invite them into your own creation and say, hey, look, it can taste good here, or like, like it can feel nice, and it's not better than what you have, it's just different. And yeah, I guess that's something that I would find very challenging. Is it something that you feel that it's a theme, or it's just I'm projecting my own imagination?
No, I mean, I think it's definitely something that can become, I think, part of our luck here, or part of what's making it easier here, is that we live in the village, and we from the first day like really participate in the village life. There's one key point, which is my partner has a 5-year-old son, and that's quite amazing how that helps us also, just like playing in the park with him, and that way like meeting people and sharing being parents, for example. It's like, finding those finding those things that we share first, to then talk about what we don't necessarily share, but that we have our differences. And I mean, also right now both in the classes that my partner is teaching, or when I'm doing my choreographic work, I wouldn't immediately show what I would show in a small stage in Copenhagen here. Like that there's also a way of considering, okay, what are people interested in here? How do people perceive the world? What are they ready for? Not in the sense that they're not ready for anything, but like more what's the interest here, and also molding into this space rather than just coming and like slamming into.
No, actually, I'm very attracted by that, because I mean, when you go to the countryside, to a place that, let's say, is less exposed to experimental ideas, blah, blah, blah. And then you're also confronted with, like, let's say, people who are more, how to put it in a way that is clear, like, it can affect your artistic ego in a positive way, I think, because sometimes, at least I've seen it with my own work and with other people's work, is that when you come with your artistic statement, it's like you're always in this mindset of like, I'm bringing the new important message to the world. Look at me, kind of. I mean, at least the funding system where I live function like this. If you don't come with that idea, nobody will give you money. Like, you have to really be passionate and communicate like how important your message is in order to get the funding. So maybe that's the problem, and not the artist themselves. And when I hear you, and you're saying like, first I want to see like, okay, what are people actually interested in, and like, where am I, rather than like, because definitely if now it just came into my mind, this imagination, if I would present the War and Love, this naked wrestling duet in your little village, it's like, like, I'm gonna like, the project is done.
Yeah.
Nobody would want to step into the studio anymore. And it actually, there is something, and it's also a certain relief. I mean, I don't know, like, that you don't need always to be so innovative, and you can just go back into, basic things and appreciate again, maybe just the beauty of sharing your movements, and not necessarily the radical concept about how to change society. I don't know. It's like, have you started, like, do you feel that because of that, it affects also your artistic practice, that it becomes like, it pulls your interest into other areas?
Yeah, I mean, definitely. It's super interesting to, both because I am doing a master's in choreography in Copenhagen, which kind of brings a lot of, I don't know if pressure in a way of like, I'm the first master student in Copenhagen to study this, and I have to be like unique on one point. And then on the other side, being here and be the only artist in my field, like here locally. And it definitely gives like a big calm down to my ego, and being like, there's tons of people in Copenhagen and Berlin and all the big cities doing radical stuff. And I don't need to really, both as a student in choreography and as a local citizen here, to just dig in to the life here and see what's necessary here, not just for me as an artist, but for people. And then there's also there's quite a big permaculture community here spread around in the valley, and my partner has been studying a lot. And in Bill Morrison, I think he's called the one who established it, or he says that when you come to a place, you need to be there for 1 year and to observe the space in all its seasons before you start changing things. And I think that that's very relevant also to not just to how you interfere with the biological system, but also how we are here as people and new neo-rural citizens of like, yeah, now in June we will have been here for an entire year, and then I think that we can more and more take decisions and move things, but from a place of first observing and understanding.
You know, these words that you said like made a click in my mind, that maybe that's the link that you can link progressivism into conservatism, because like at least the way I experience the like life if we look at these kind of polars, that there's a lot of tension nowadays. Like people are becoming more and more tribals in their identities and beliefs. And what you've said now is like, okay, if you come to a place, spend a year, see what is happening, and then start influencing it. And that's an extremely conservative position. It's like, before you do any change, just see what is already working. And that's a conservative standpoint. But funny enough, like most of the people who are more interested in permaculture, sustainability, global warming, ecology are people that are on the progressive camp. And maybe that's a way to link the two, that actually that there is actually some value in it, because I think that when I hear it, it sounds like that being conservative or like taking this conservative approach is not because you're like stubborn, but because you're humble. No, it's like first you humble yourself and you want to see what is happening around, and then you take a careful approach of changing things. At least that's how I interpret your words.
Yeah. I mean, definitely. I think that coming here and moving to the countryside is definitely a big lesson also in humility. And also it brings me back to, at some point you said that nature also sometimes can be very extreme, no? And here we definitely feel like this, that sometimes there's week where you have a plan that we need to do this, this and this, and then we have 1 week of intense rain. And then you need to just accept that and be like, okay, so what can I do within these conditions, and not just like be stubborn and go out in the rain and keep doing things. But yeah, being flexible around people and around nature, what it offers you. And yeah.
So maybe one more personal question, because you already mentioned it before, and it's actually a question that I wrote down in my list of questions. and you mentioned that you started to kind of recognize what is the beauty about looking at one place and digging into the details. So what could you say like that you have benefited from settling down? Because there was so many years that for me you were like just like a traveling ghost, that I couldn't follow where you are, because you were always changing locations and meeting, and like, so what do you harvest now after being a year in the same place and investing in some roots?
Yeah. Again, I think it's not either or, because I'm very grateful for all the years that I have been traveling and growing in that sense. But I think that, first of all, I was just talking with a neighbor about it yesterday, that my sensation here is that I can settle down and that I have so many things that I can learn and discover in this single place. So that's definitely part of why it's here that I'm settling down. And yeah, I think understanding that in one place you can also dig deep and learn many things. And then the studio as a possibility of inviting people to come here and in that way still be connected internationally. And for sure, I mean, I'm still gonna travel around, but not as intensely. And it's also linked to the situation that suddenly borders are closed, or it's much more complicated to move around, that it made me think about like, yeah, how am I living my life, and how do I really want to live my life in a more sustainable way? And then, yeah, I think settling down is also linked to the desire of having kids eventually, and having like a more stable way of living and supporting that So yeah, it's different needs and desires that have brought me to this situation.
Yeah, it's super interesting that's something I love about the podcast, like, because I can invite people. And first I started to learn like what a great thing is to have a platform that you can invite people. And then I can just hear a lot of stories that, just when I hear you speak, it also strengthened me in my life choices and like kind of also seeing somebody who is a bit younger than me going through something that has links to, in some extent, to how I've been managing myself, and to see that there is some kind of a pattern that is not that exists not because it's some kind of a heavyweight negative thing, but because it's like that's a certain way of learning that certain people need to go through, and yeah, it's very nice to hear where you are, and yeah, I want to also give you some space, particularly to share with the audience, like, what is this crowdfunding? Why would people want to support? How would they be able to reach out, and what are the offerings that you have planned in the future that people can tap a little bit more into the space? Salah Saib? Do I pronounce it correct? No.
Salah Sabil.
Sabil. Okay,
yeah.
sorry.
Yeah, it's maybe not the easiest name, but we decided to take the local name in this complex of this building. And
Sala is hall, no?
Sala is, space. Or a hall, a space.
Okay.
Una sala.
And Sabil is the name of
Sabil is the name from this place. Right next by there's a Sidra museum. Sidra is a very local apple cider drink that every farmers drink here, and then there's a restaurant and a kind of hostel, but the old name of this local place is Sabil. So everyone in the valley, if you say Sabil, they know where it is. And so we decided to really go for that local name. But then it's also Sasa, Sala, Sabil, Sasa. Cool. A bit easier, Sasa. That's the artistic variation. Cool. And I talked a bit about it before, but we found this space that we've been renovating and making it suitable for moving in, and then we found ourselves in the need of economical help and decided to go for a crowdfunding, because we realized that we know a lot of people that this project will hopefully inspire and interest. And the crowdfunding, like the money goes to finish paying off the floor, ventilation, lighting of the space, making a nice webpage so that we can communicate properly also through technology about the space. And what people can get from it is that they can get to know the space in different ways. Like I don't know the word in English, recompensas. What we offer in return is
compensation.
It's maybe. Different ways of getting discounts or invitations to come to the space, either through a weekend intensive or residencies, or coming and visiting the space and spending some time in nature. And for me, I think even more in these times that we're living, I think it's really important that we have spaces where we can meet and exchange on a physical and mental level. And I think that I've observed more a tendency of people going more to the countryside. And I think for me personally, I realized that I want to have my base in the countryside and sometimes go to the cities. But I understand that for other people, it's the other way around, that they still feel like their base is in the cities, but that there will maybe be a need to go to the countryside. So this space is also thought for that, for people that maybe don't want to do the big step, but that want to have a space that sometimes they can come and get some fresh air long views from.
Yeah, so it sounds like a call for everybody who's interested in physical practice, or maybe joining some workshops, or doing the residency, to come and support a little bit and harvest the benefits in the future by diving into this place. Yeah, it seems
Definitely. And also
very beautiful. From what I've seen.
Yeah, thank you. That I just one of our plans here is also to do more like exchanges where people can come and spend mornings in the studio in exchange of helping us with the more rural farming work in the afternoons. So also a way of doing this meeting point between using the body and in the farming way, and then afterwards, so before going to the studio and focusing more on just on the movement practice.
This is a very cool proposition.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, Manon. So we've been talking for a while, and I feel like I got a lot from conversing with you. And I will definitely link everything in the description of the podcast to the project and to the crowdfunding campaign and to your own stuff and profiles. And yeah, I want to thank you for coming and sharing so much with me.
Thank you for inviting me.
I really hope to have the opportunity to meet again in the near future, and not in like far distance. I can imagine convincing my wife to come to a beautiful Spanish mountain village. So I hope we can make it happen.
I hope so too. That would be really, really amazing. Yeah, and thank you for inviting me. That was a great way to exchange a bit after some time.
Thank you, Manon. Until the next time. For more movement-related content and educational training programs, visit our website at www.movementlab.eu.